There's this really interesting paradox we're going to get into today. It's all about why some of the most decorated, accomplished leaders from the military can really struggle when they step into the civilian world. Let's dive in.
I mean, think about it, right? How does that even make sense? You've got a leader who's been tested in the absolute highest stakes environments you can imagine, and yet they run into trouble in what, on the surface, looks like a much simpler setting. We're going to unpack exactly why that happens.
So, to really get a handle on this, let's talk about someone we'll call Sergeant Major Alex Rivera. Now, he's a composite character based on lots of real-world experiences, and he is an absolute top-tier leader, the kind of person you'd want in charge, no question. But his new mission? It's not the battlefield, it's the boardroom.
And that's exactly where our story kicks off, with failure. Yep, we're going to see how the very skills and experience that made him so incredible in the military actually turned into his biggest weakness, at least at first.
So, who is this guy really? I mean, his resume is incredible. We're talking 24 years of active duty service. He rose through the ranks to become a senior non-commissioned officer. He has tons of experience leading big teams under unbelievable stress. Then he gets this new job, operations manager at a logistics company. He's in charge of just 35 people. Piece of cake, right?
Well, it wasn't a piece of cake. Not at all. In fact, within his first year, the numbers started telling a pretty rough story. Employee complaints are way up, and people are leaving his team left and right. The company literally hired him because of his leadership skills, and now those very skills seem to be the problem.
And if you look at it from Rivera's side, you can almost feel his frustration, can't you? In his mind, people just aren't following basic, simple instructions. He sees a total lack of discipline. He's doing exactly what has always worked for him for over 2 decades, but now it is just completely blowing up in his face.
And this really gets us to the heart of it. What we've got here is a classic case of two worlds colliding. Each one has its own unwritten rules, its own culture, and its own expectations. Let's see how that played out.
So, while Rivera's thinking lack of discipline, his team is seeing something completely different. The feedback that comes back about him is that he's too intense, unapproachable. They're reacting to the exact same behavior, but their interpretation is a world apart.
Okay, let's get specific. Take something as simple as a staff meeting. For Rivera, his method is the definition of efficiency. You start on the dot, you give clear directives, and you get to work. No interruptions. But for his team, it feels like a one-way speech. They think, he doesn't care what we think, he just wants to talk at us.
And this next example, wow. This one really hits home. A deadline gets missed, so Rivera does what he's been trained to do. Corrective action. He calls out the person publicly, points out the mistake, and assigns extra work to reinforce the standard. In the military, that's just another Tuesday. In his office, it's seen as public shaming, and it sends his team running straight to HR.
So let's be super clear about something here. This is not about Rivera being a bad or incompetent leader. Not even close. This is about his perfectly honed methods being used in a completely different context. It's like trying to use a hammer to drive a screw. Great tool, wrong job.
And this table just lays it all out crystal clear. Just look at authority, for instance. In the military, there's a clear hierarchy. An order is an order. But in most offices, it's about influence and persuasion. Or think about communication. That direct, blunt style that's so efficient in the field can come across as just plain rude in a workplace that values dialogue and empathy. The operating systems are totally different.
There's actually a psychological term for what's happening to him. It's called role conflict. Rivera's basically being torn between two completely different roles. The one he perfected for 24 years, the senior NCO whose word is final, and this new one he's supposed to play, the civilian coach who needs to guide and empower. That internal tug-of-war is at the absolute center of this whole thing.
Okay, so it sounds pretty bleak, but here's the good news. This story doesn't end in failure. It ends in adaptation. So how did Rivera manage to turn this whole ship around? Well, it all started with a really important intervention.
See, the company he worked for, they did something smart. They didn't just give up on him. They saw the potential and decided to invest in him. And you can see the whole process right here. His original, unadapted style was leading to terrible results. But then comes the intervention and coaching, which helps him develop a new, adapted style. And that, in turn, leads to really positive outcomes.
So what did he actually do differently? Well, these weren't just small tweaks, they were fundamental shifts. Instead of calling people out in public, he started having private, one-on-one coaching sessions. Instead of just barking orders, he started asking his team, hey, how do you think we should solve this? And crucially, he started explaining the why behind his decisions, getting everyone involved in the plan. He went from commander to collaborator.
And here's the payoff. The proof is in the pudding, right? Just look at this. Now this data is just to illustrate the point, but it shows the pattern perfectly. His original style, it scored a 2.4, pretty low. But his new, adapted, military-informed style, it scores a 4.1. He's not just doing okay now, he's actually outperforming the managers who never served. He figured out how to blend the best of both worlds.
Okay, so this is a great story, but what's the lesson here? What can we all actually learn from Rivera's journey? Because there are some huge takeaways here, both for veterans who are transitioning and for the companies that are lucky enough to hire them.
So if you're a veteran making this exact transition, the one word you gotta remember is translation. It's about reframing your whole identity, from being a commander to being a coach. You don't have to lower your standards, not at all. You just change how you get there. You invite questions, you explain the mission, and you learn to work within your new company's systems for holding people accountable.
And hey, this isn't all on the veteran. Organizations have a huge role to play here too. You can't just hire a vet for their leadership skills, drop them in the deep end, and hope it works out. You gotta invest. Give them mentors. Educate your existing managers on what military culture is actually like, and help them translate those incredible skills into your world.
And that really brings us to the most important idea, the big takeaway from all of this. The leadership skills learned in the military are not the problem. They're amazing. The problem happens when those skills are just copied and pasted into a new environment without any translation. Success comes from that thoughtful adaptation.
So I'll just leave you with this one last thing to chew on, whether it's for your own career or your organization. Are you building a place that's designed to help people translate their incredible, diverse experiences, or are you just expecting them to transfer their skills and hoping for the best? Because the answer to that question makes all the difference.